pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces and our first responders. Thank you. Do we have anybody?
I'm not sure anybody signed up. Anybody from the public? Public speaking?
We start off with the registrar. Hello, sir.
How you doing? Good evening, Mayor, Town Council, Board of Finance, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a busy year. Everybody knows that. We've got a presidential preference coming up. At least one referendum, got another primary in August, and the election in November. The reason why we went up for it is the cost. Ballots, got to order, the state tells us we got to order 110%, which is a huge cost. We also have extra personnel because of the EDRs they created and the absentee ballots. Last election we had 450 EDRs, which is election day registrations, and about 1,300 absentee ballots.
Page 116.
How many absentee were signed?
About 1,300 we had during the last election. People are starting to realize that let's do an absentee instead of coming to the polls. Actually, the state is pushing for early voting, which I'm completely against. But what I suggested is no excuse absentee ballot. I'd rather have an absentee ballot for early voting. At least you can control them better, better security on them, especially in cities, not so much in Milford, a smaller town for the cities,
Because anybody can fill out an absentee, really.
They can, but you're supposed to be either out of town or working, or nobody's turned down. They say whatever, out of town, working. And that's okay with us, I mean, it's still better than an early voting, I think, I think we can keep better control of it, Like I said, the big cost is that, and then the extra personnel of the presidential too. Is going to be, there's going to be almost 20 people extra than we usually have during an election, because we need, each poll's going to have an additional person, and then because of the EDRs, election day registrations, we run a minimum of 8 people, and then of course you have absentee ballots, which is 4, and when I hear other towns talk, they're talking 25, 30 people that they use at the same size we do, so I think we do pretty well with that, Our poll workers are great, that's all I can say, That's pretty much it. And then last year we had, we asked for another tabulator because of the EDRs and all that, we got so many of them now, and the extra absentee ballots that we have. We didn't spend the money for that last year, but we want to keep it in there because the state is, one of the companies right now is trying to put out a new tabulator, which is incredible. I hope they come out with it, really. But they haven't approved it yet. And so we figured let's not spend any money on this, let's try a new one. Hopefully if it comes out in a year or so.
Any questions for Mr. Vernier?
Just real quick.
Doug?
Wasn't there a problem at the last election? What was that problem with the counting? Wasn't there one machine down or something?
We had 3 machines now, but that's not a problem with us. I usually travel to the districts. Registers tell me I'm insane, only to the towns, but I travel to myself to all the districts during the day, because I found out that the moderators and all that, I think it gives them a boost of confidence when I'm there in person. If they got any crazy questions or anything. What happened was, and I knew we were going to have problems, I even complained to LHS about it, it was the size of the ballots. There's no reason why they should have been that size, they were bigger than they ever were, they could have cut those ballots down by 3 inches.
Right.
So we had problems with 3 tabulators in 3 different districts, but I was there immediately with it, and nothing ever stopped or anything, but it's amazing how fast the newspapers got wind of it, because I had to deal with 3
I
newspapers.
remember there was an issue, but I didn't remember exactly.
No, what happened is the biggest issue we had that wasn't an issue was up at Sarah Noble. What happened was it was 7:30, no, it was 7:15 at night, the tabulator just shredded a ballot, it just shredded it. A woman came up and decided that she didn't want to vote. She yanked the ballot out of there, and it destroyed the tabulator. is what it did.
Oh, no.
So when I went up there to find out what it was, actually it happened very quickly, but it didn't stop anything because, you know, we train our people to put it in the auxiliary box, all their ballots and stuff. So I was there within 5 minutes because I was already on the road and I happened to be on the way up there. When I found out I couldn't fix the tabulator, I came back there, we reprogrammed the tabulator. I was there within half an hour total. Back when the new tabulator, they refed things back through again. At 7:45, the same thing happened to the second tabulator. Chewed it up, tabulated it down dead. And the problem is, we couldn't get totals or anything out of it, because it just froze. We couldn't back anything out of it, we couldn't do anything. So what we did was I went back again, got another tabulator, so we went back there again. And what happened was, the third one went down again. So I just told everybody, leave. You know, and our poll workers, I can't believe I had at least 20 people volunteer to try to stay that night to help us out and everything else. I said, just go home, it's late enough. So what we did, we locked everything up, signed everything out. I went up there with, you know, 2 other people to come back with me for security and stuff. Brought the tabulator back here, and we ran everything back that night when we came back here to that tabulator. And we left
I know it was a
2 in
long
the
night for
morning.
you guys, yeah.
Yeah, but as far as voting, it never stopped anywhere. So the newspapers, like I said, they were, it's amazing how they get all over it real quick. But when they found out there was really nothing to write about,
Right.
because it didn't affect the voting or tallies or anything else, you know, everything was there. So they got completed.
Any other questions for Mr. Grenier? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Marshall.
Next, County Tax Assessor. And that is page, first one is page 9, which is your revenue.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Lastra, the town assessor, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to present the assessor's budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. So my first slide starts off with assessor revenues. We do generate a small amount of revenue in the department through fees for copies of assessment records. So on page 9 of the budget, we've itemized $1,200. That's actually a reduction from previous years. And one of the reasons I think is we've made a concerted effort over the last year to provide up-to-date assessment information on the internet. Our real property information is updated on a monthly basis, and as changes are made to our tax maps, our geographic information system, those updates are available immediately. So we're seeing less real estate professionals such as appraisers, title searchers, realtors coming into the office and actually paying for a copy of a map or a property record card. And they're able to access that information online in many cases and avoid a trip to the office and avoid paying us 50 cents or $1 for a copy.
Anybody have any questions concerning the revenues? Okay, next, page 89.
One thing I was going to quickly mention was the grand list. It's for the October 119 grand list. We're at $2.95 billion approximately. 80% of the town's budget is raised from the property tax. And displayed a pie chart here which gives an indication of what the makeup of the grand list looks like. 86% of the grand list roughly is real estate, 5.84% business personal property, and 7.9% of the grand list is made up of motor vehicles. So on the next page, page 89, I've listed out our line item for salaries and personnel. As you can see, it's $191,240. So this represents a salary for myself, the assessor, Mary Zullo, our assessor technician, and Jill Lucas, our secretary. And I'm blessed to have 2 very hardworking, intelligent staff members that work very hard in my office and to serve the taxpayers of New Milford.
And Brian, if you could let the council and the Board of Finance know, you have here the AAT certified salary adjustment.
Yes.
So they understand what that means.
Okay, yeah, so the AAT certified salary adjustment is a line, an amount we put in, $3,434, that's specified by union contract. Jill Lucas is on track to attain the AAT, which is the Administrative Assessment Technician designation. So she's been taking the workshops and the courses, and hopefully this year she will, in the next fiscal year, she will attain that designation, provided the classes or workshops are offered. We also have a line item for overtime. So far this year, we have not spent any money on overtime. I don't anticipate reaching that amount this year. I've budgeted the 500 again for next year. Next year's a revaluation year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in my presentation, but we're conducting a revaluation in the next fiscal year, completing one. So there could be a need for overtime, just based on the amount of activity that a reassessment is going to generate. So my next slide talks about personal property tax audits. It's line item 53-311. We budget each year, we've been doing this for quite a few years, $10,000 that we pay to a private consultant to conduct audits of personal property accounts. Personal property is more or less a self-reporting system, meaning that we send out personal property declarations. Businesses are required to fill them out and return them to us by November 1st of each year. And basically what we're looking for is how much money they spent on their furniture, fixtures, equipment in a year, and what that total amount was by year. So we do these audits to make sure that the amounts that they're declaring to us tie out to their income tax records, their fixed asset schedules. So we hire a consultant who examines their IRS filings, and then we tie those out to what is actually being declared on the personal property declaration. And frequently we will find omissions of items, and with respect to the statute, we're allowed to go back 3 years and chart and increase the assessment, and then send out a revised bill. So in the past, for example, we just completed audits for 2018, 17, and 2016, and we've generated approximately $35,000 in additional tax revenue. So it pays. This is a line item in a sense that actually pays for itself. We see a return on our investment. And one of the other side benefits is that as business owners and property tax professionals become aware of our audits, it helps ensure compliance. So if a local accountant knows that we're auditing personal property accounts, it helps generate a more accurate property tax declaration. Some business owners won't use their accountants. They'll try to fill it out on their own, and sometimes they're just kind of guessing at what they acquired during the previous years. So that's where some of these mistakes are discovered. So the next slide talks about training and development. So we budget $3,000 each year. That covers our membership dues to professional organizations that provide training and educational opportunities. We attend Connecticut Association of Assessing Officers approved workshops and seminars for certification and continuing education. So Mary is a CCMA 1, I'm a CCMA 2. We're required to take courses and accumulate continuing education credits over a 5-year period. So we use this training money so that we can attend workshops, seminars for credit, so that we can maintain our certification. And again, we're also having Jill attend. She's taking the CCMA courses, and she will within another year be eligible to take this the Connecticut Certified Municipal Assessor exam. And we also use this money so that she can attend the AAT workshops. The next line item is materials and supplies, $8,000. Most of us hope that someday we can move away from a paper society. We still use and print a lot of paper. So we spend about $4,500 printing our grand list and printing all the forms that we use in our work, personal property declarations, applications for elderly, tax relief. So notices that go out for increased assessments every year when I sign the grand list. So we do spend a lot of money on paper and postage. We spend $250 to access DMV records through their portal. This is helpful to us when someone comes in, for example, they get a bill on July 1 for a car that they sold, let's say, in April. We'll ask them for a plate receipt. They turn in their plates. They said they turned the plates in, but they don't have the receipt. DMV will charge you $25 for that receipt if you go and ask them for a copy. But we can use the portal to access that information and save the taxpayer a trip to DMV. And we can also see if that car's been sold to somebody else, if they told us that they sold it to somebody else in Connecticut. So it's very helpful access to help save the taxpayer time and effort. It saves us time also. We spend about $1,250 with the National Automotive Dealers Association, their motor vehicle pricing subscription. All of our motor vehicles, I should say 90% of the motor vehicles are priced using the NADA clean retail value. We're required by state statute to use NADA clean retail. So this subscription basically pays for us as a town, and all the towns in Connecticut also pay these types of fees to be able to have our vehicles priced through DMV and the NADA. And then finally, we spend about $2,000 on office supplies, paper, pens, etc. And then for the first time this year, line item 57350, we're itemizing the computer software that is specific to our office, and that is related to what we spend on our real property database administration software that we use through Vision Government Solutions. So we're spending about $19,000 a year on software. That covers our database cloud hosting. So our data is actually on a server that's outside of Boston. So we're spending about $8,000 a year to have our data maintained on a server that is remotely located, and we don't have to spend, meaning the town doesn't have to spend the money on maintaining a server and upgrading a server. It also covers the cost for what we call web hosting. Our data is, as many of you may know, is on the internet. And let's see. We spend about $3,616 per year to have our data hosted by Vision Government Solutions on their servers. So again, real property professionals, taxpayers, they can access their property information online from home. They don't have to come into the office. So we spend that money to have that data accessible from home. Our mass appraisal software that we use to maintain the information in our office, we pay a licensing fee of $6,496 a year for that. And then there's also a GIS interface within Vision, and that allows us to display our maps, our GIS maps within the appraisal software. So if we're doing analysis within the software, like sale assessment ratio statistics, we can plot those on a map and actually see outliers, for example, if our assessments are too low or too high, maybe in a specific area, or specific neighborhood. We can plot that kind of information on a map. So we spend $981 for that, per year for that GIS interface.
Anybody have any questions on the expense for operations?
The computer software, where was that originally?
That was under IT. So
Yep.
what we're doing now is taking the recommendation of the efficiency committee, which was to create cost centers. So we're migrating the true costs for each department into the cost centers. We'll be able to really have a full set of the cost center at the next meeting. So this is the first start to putting the computer software. If it's solely theirs, to put it in there.
Didn't make more sense.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Thank you. Thank you.
Just a quick question. The cost for the private audit was $10,000, correct?
Yes,
Is that per year, right?
yes.
So in 3 years, you return $35,000 in revenue?
Yeah, and that's in one fiscal year though. We go back 3 years, right, yeah, we go through 3
Just
years.
make sure we didn't.
Yeah.
30 minutes.
Sure, yeah.
Diane, you have a
That
question?
was my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, the software makes it easier for people to go online and get information.
Right.
There's no cost savings on anywhere with that, it's just a nice service we have. It doesn't seem like it lowered any costs in your budget.
Yeah,
Staff?
it's staff time. It's that, you know, when I started in this business 40 years ago, the only way to get access to your information was to come into the office and have somebody pull your card out of, your property record
No, no, I
card
see.
out of a folder.
But staff, I guess staff's been fairly flat, it's gone up a little bit, I guess from 2018, is that when we started implementing?
No, this has been available for a while. I think one of the problems was we weren't updating every month. We weren't updating on a regular cycle. So when I started, it'd been almost a year since the data had been updated. So if you're a real property professional, appraiser, realtor, well, if you see that the data hasn't been updated in a year, you're probably going to be suspicious of whether it's accurate. So you'll come in. So starting last May, we started to update every month. We got on a cycle. And I think that's really started to dwindle some of the traffic.
Okay, I just, personnel haven't gone down, so that's been my only question.
Okay.
Well, I know, so that's what I'm asking, is this, the software won't save us money since we
But it's
got to think.
efficiency.
Yeah, it's more of an
It hasn't
efficiency,
used
right.
as overtime, so I mean,
It's more of an efficiency. You know, it's hard to quantify.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand.
I do have another question. How do you go about seeing if cars that are registered to other states
Yeah.
should be registered here?
That's a chronic problem in Connecticut, and we've been battling with the with DMV on that. I mean, there's a statute on the books that says if you reside in Connecticut, you're supposed to register your cars here within 60 days. And I've been told that 30 years ago, there used to be an enforcement unit that actually, through the DMV, that worked on that went out and basically ticketed cars that were not registered. And they, you know, when somebody comes up to you, whether it's a police officer or somebody from the DMV, an enforcement officer, you know, that's going to make a difference. And so that's been by the wayside. In fact, the legislature passed a law a couple years ago that said if you know, the DMV would assist us in finding the owners of cars registered in other states, that they would actually get a piece of the money. They would actually get a piece of the tax dollars. And the DMV said, got the law repealed because they said you don't have the people to work on that, to do that work. So what we do is we rely on people within town that inform us of unregistered cars if they see them. So we add them to the personal property list and tax them on the personal property. It's an unregistered motor vehicle, even though it may be registered in Florida or New York. So in order to identify those, we have access to the New York DMV. Obviously, they're close, and we've been able to obtain access to their records. So if somebody reports a New York plate, at least we can look up and see who the real owner of the plate is and where. And then they'll tell us where they found that car, and then we can track down the person that way. And our Assessors Association just obtained a list. I just got an email 2 days ago from cars that are registered in Vermont, Florida, and New York, where the person registering the car has a Connecticut address. So we're gonna look at that and follow up on that also. So, but it's an epidemic, it really is a problem.
Well, I'm sure it's difficult, especially here with the, the lake community
Right, yeah,
being here this summer.
yes, yeah,
But I would think, spotting out of state tags at the high school.
right, exactly, we get that, yeah, we get reports at the bus stops,
Yeah,
people calling in, so,
okay,
yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Just quickly, Brian, thank you for, when I went in to visit Brian, I had a little issue with my property declaration form that comes in October.
Yes,
I really-
yeah.
I'm straightened out, very personal, and a great guy to talk to. My only question is, will that form ever be online? So that we don't have to do that? I mean, because with my business, it's very simple. It kind of stays the same.
Right.
But it just seems redundant that I can't do it online. There's a lot of things you can do online.
Right.
Do you see that ever coming?
Yeah, our vendor has started to an online filing form, and that's something that we're looking at. I think, I've been talking to Jill about it. We're thinking maybe to try to implement it next year.
Maybe a box like in the corner, if somebody wants to be notified by email
Yeah,
on the paper.
Right.
And then there could be a place for an email,
Mhm.
maybe save a little more time on
Yeah.
your side, and a little less paperwork. I don't know how
Yeah.
exactly that could happen, but I think it would save time for a lot, both you guys and
Right.
and the person in business. So.
Oh, yeah, it would, yeah, and save you the time filling it out by hand and then putting it in the mail,
Yeah,
so we can,
I
so-
have 30 of them on my clipboard from the last 30 years of doing them, and I just kind of repeat and copy.
right,
And so it would just be easier if I could go online and do it. as well.
yeah, so we'll look into that. Quality Data Systems is our vendor for tax administration and tax collection.
Okay.
And they have set up a online reporting for personal property declarations.
Okay.
And I've talked to some other towns, and they've said that it started, it works well for them.
Okay.
So that's something that we'll look at then.
Great. Thank you.
Well,
Any other questions for Brian?
Okay.
Thank you. We'll go down to the last one, capital.
Okay. So my next
Page
slide,
252.
I did put a thing in here about tax rebates and refunds on page 96. We've upped that from 60,000 to 65,000. This is money that we pay back to taxpayers. It's mostly motor vehicle related overpayments, and it primarily applies to like leased vehicles. So if you think about leased cars, a lot of people own leased cars. Leasing companies like Toyota Motor Credit, GMAC, they get their bills on July 1st. They just want to pay it. A lease could have been turned in the month before that. They just want to pay their bills so they're not hit with interest and penalties. So eventually they do follow up with us, and it'll be 6 months later, and they'll show us that a car we taxed for the whole year only was leased for a month. The lease expired, so we'll owe them 11 months of refund. So that's where most of these refunds go to. Page 97 of my budget talks about the assessor's legal, and this is legal services to cover complex tax litigation, so tax appeals. Then we move on to assessor's capital, and I have $23,500. This is on page 253. This is funding for our state mandated revaluation of real property. And this $23,500 represents the balance of the funds needed to pay for our 2020 revaluation. So we've been setting aside money over every year over the last 4 years. So this basically represents the balance to pay for the total cost of our reassessment, which is $379,000. By state statute, we're required to reassess property every 5 years. And once every 10 years, we must attempt to measure and inspect all the properties. So every 10 years, that reassessment costs more than the one in the intervening years where we use the existing data that we already have. And this particular revaluation is a full inspection, full measure and list of all property. Vision Government Solutions. which is our mass appraisal software vendor. They also perform consulting services for revaluations. They're doing, their staff is doing most of the inspections of the real estate in New Milford. And at the present time, they're about 60% complete with their inspections. We anticipate them to be done by June, into June. Then we'll be recalibrating our valuation software and setting new assessments. And we anticipate the notices for new assessments probably going out near the end of November. And then we have time before I sign the grand list in January to do meetings with taxpayers to discuss their new assessment if they have questions, make any adjustments for any mistakes that may have been made. And then the last item in my capital budget is our GIS mapping. We'll be spending $15,600 to a company called AppGeo out of Boston. They maintain my tax maps, so we send them changes based on surveys, subdivisions, parcel merges, and they update our maps for us. And then again, this GIS information is available online so that people can look up their properties, see their boundaries, see where they can overlay aerial photography and other map changes that MapGeo does for us. They'll resolve boundary line issues, and also they'll plot out any easement areas within a property. And they also, we have other layers that they can add. They've added our wetlands, our FEMA floodplains, farm soils. So there's other pieces of information than just the parcel boundaries and addresses. So that is pretty much my presentation.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to your staff, your department.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next is going to be Nancy, for tax collector.
Good evening, everyone. Nancy McGadd, tax collector. The majority, or the biggest part of the increase is due to personnel increases.
Page 92, everybody. For the expense side.
And then as far as the seasonal help in July, I'm asking to increase that $250. And also $250 for the one union employee for overtime as needed. Everything here on this stayed the same. There was no increases to the DMV assessment at $300, training for workshops, seminars, and conferences at $400, and then our materials and supplies that we use for the printing and postage of the tax bills, for newspaper ads, or legal notices, and then just miscellaneous office supplies.
Any questions for Nancy?
This slide here is just showing what the collection was last year from July 2018 through June of 2019, and just the breakdown between what's processed in the office, what was paid with credit cards in the office, then our online payments in green, and the lockbox that we would use in July and January.
And one of the things too that we've been able to do through Nancy's department is we also allow banks, Savings Bank in Danbury and Webster, to take payments for us as well.
In July and
July
January.
and January.
Yeah.
That's helped as well.
That's working out really nice.
And also Nancy stayed, like Saturday in January, the last Saturday, she actually opened up her office so that people could come in and make their January payment on time for Saturday. So we'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you very very
I'm
much.
thinking of doing that again in July, but it's gonna interfere with Village Fair Days, so I don't know.
Get a booth.
And this slide here is just showing what we've collected so far from July of 19 through February of 2015 and the different breakdowns. And just short and sweet tonight, and that's
Any
all I
questions
have.
for Nancy?
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
I will, thank you.
Thank you. Next is personnel. Mr. Valera. Page 103.
Fire marshal,
Good evening, Town Council and Board of Finance. The Personnel Department, so the Personnel Department serves as the human resource function for all of the town departments with the exception of the Board of Education. So we've got about 291 full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees that are reporting to us. So the budget for this year, personnel salaries is a total of $140,104. We have a slight increase here from merit-based increases and a slight salary adjustment for the personnel assistant, and then also longevity is going to be for that. So our supplies and expenses, tuition reimbursement, we have seen a large increase in tuition reimbursement and employees going back to school. This is especially true for the police department. And the police department, in their contract, they're limited by credit statement and not by dollar value, where it's limited by dollar value for the rest of the town employees. So we see a little bit of an increase there. It actually goes back to the 2017-18 level. You'll see in the materials and supplies, it's a large increase, but that's due to us bringing in the Novatime contracting system. So I know at the town council meeting, you had kind of shown the time cards, and this is what's currently used by employees. So we're going to be eliminating this and moving to a more modern time. So by implementing this, this $15,000 is going to be the service for the entire year for all of the town employees. Our recruitment expense is staying flat at $5,000, as is our drug and alcohol testing. The drug and alcohol testing is specifically for the DPW employees, where it's a federal mandate for the CDL drivers. Our employee wellness and employee assistant program, we're increasing this due to, one, increased expenses in terms of providing employee assistance, but we're also incorporating the fire department into the DAA.
Okay, so there you started to answer one of my questions. So in your budget, you have training for any department
No,
and, I'm sorry, tuition and reimbursement.
tuition reimbursement
A little
program.
bit wrong.
Correct.
Okay, so now you just mentioned the employee assistance, so that's other departments, it's not your department.
Not specific to the personnel department. This is for all the employees.
Okay. And just another question, the drug and alcohol testing we do not do for any other staff that's hired, only DPW and
That is
police?
correct, for the CDL drivers.
Police department do it?
The police department don't have the drug and alcohol testing under this platform, because this platform is done through KERMA, and it's a federal regulation, so it's specifically through Gregory and Allen.
Okay, thanks.
What are the value limits?
I'm sorry?
The value limits that you mentioned for the tuition reimbursement, is it,
So
Or
for
is it-
non-union, it's $3,000 per fiscal year.
okay, per
Several,
person?
per person,
Okay.
correct, per fiscal year. Within several of the collective bargaining agreements, this listed at, or limited at $1,000 per fiscal year per employee.
Okay,
And then in the police department, it's capped at 12 credits per
okay,
fiscal
thank
year.
you.
And then our training and development stays flat. Any other questions on the expenses? Great, so our total budget, it's a big increase for us this year. It's actually the first time that I've had an increase in the personnel line. But again, that's due to the increase in the tuition reimbursement as well as the overtime expense.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you, Greg.
Hold on, one more question.
Steve?
So the tuition reimbursement increase is strictly contractual then?
It's contractual through the personnel rule regulations, correct?
Okay, thanks.
The number of times,
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Greg.
you, Greg.
Thank you to Diane as well.
Thank you.
Next is, Greg, can I ask you a favor, could you click on for the fire department? Should be up there, I believe.
Fire marshal?
Yep.
This
Sorry.
wrong one?
Thanks. So fire marshal is not available tonight, so I'll talk a little bit. So we'll go on page 29, which is on the revenue side, as the fire marshal has inspection fees. So you'll see where the fire marshal had put down $53,000 as his request. I upped it by $7,000. The reason being is we look at our actuals. In 2019, we're at $67,940, and currently we're at $31,060 for the 6 months. We did have one big condo unit complex that we did do last year that we're not doing this year, so that's why I didn't jump it to the full 67 or 68, and I put it at 60. Does anybody have any question on the revenues?
What's it coming in?
I don't know. I'm thinking it's Willow Springs, but I don't want to say that and not know 100%. Sure. Next, we're going to go to the expenses, so that'd be page 146. And then it goes to 147, breaks out the payments, so you have the fire marshal with his pay, and then the longevity pay, the secretary, and that's contractual uptick. Assistant fire marshal is union, and we, with the temp council approval, moved him up a step, and that was to be more in line with his job description, because he was working out of scope before. The overtime remains the same. The development stays the same. The education and training went down a little bit, $417 after talking with the fire marshal. Material and supplies stay the same. The same for the turnout gear, I believe it went down $300, I think. There's turnout gear. And then the computer software, as we spoke about before, this is something that we've used. It was housed in the IT department. We've broken it out and put it actually into the software. We use Firehouse software. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Next, we're going to move on to the emergency management budget, which is, well, which will be starting with 140, 149. Yep, it says emergency management. So there's stipends, and as you can see, an increase in stipends as we have within the EOC, which is going to be your emergency operations chairperson, which is the fire marshal, and he gets his stipend. And then we have 2 assistants, which is Kevin Reynolds, who is the assistant fire marshal, and Jim Furlow, who was the former chief of Waterwitch. And definitely needed when we have major town emergencies, such as when we had the microburst a year ago, almost 2 years ago now, where it's very important to have boots on the ground, especially when we're dealing with all sorts of incidents, working with the police department, working with the DPW, working with Eversource. That's very important to have that, as well as we're doing our planning along with the police department for active shooting, for any kind of mass casualty would happen here in New York. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Next, we're going to move on to the police department. I'm sorry, 157 for the planning budget. I apologize. Sorry, Chief.
Good exercise.
And you can see when you go to 158, it's kind of breaking down to a $4,000 budget. And it's basically the same. You have the and supplies, equipment for basically for CERT. And then they have the regular CERT equipment, supplies, vests, flashlights, things of that nature, and then other emergency equipment and supplies as needed. Sorry, Chief, so now, police department.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, Town Council, Board of Finance, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very proud to be here representing the men and women of the New Milford Police Department. I'd like to welcome our veterans in the audience, of course. Thank you for your service. And speaking of which, I just want to make a special mention. One of our officers was deployed to Afghanistan, Officer Ray Arnold. He's currently serving. He's a helicopter pilot, so he's in harm's way every day. And I just want to ask you to keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you, Volunteers. So I'm very happy to be here tonight to discuss our budget, the drivers of our budget. And I want to thank you for all you've done for us at the New Milford Police Department. A budget is a plan, as you know, and it's a plan that allows us to do what we need to do to provide for the public safety of our community. Our officers have done amazing work. Our staff works diligently every day for this community, and I'm very proud of the work they do. I want to go over some of our accomplishments in the last year, and I also want to talk about some of the drivers within our budget. As you know, we've come a long way in the last year. We're a department that's on the move. We're a department that is dedicated to excellence in service, and we're a department that is working to be the best. And we cannot do that without a solid budget and without your help, so we appreciate that. Our first slide is an organizational chart, and the reason I put this up there is because there's a few drivers I want to mention. As you can see, we are requesting an increase in our operating budget, $353,000 of an increase. And a big part of that is personnel. We recently hired a police captain.
Page 128.
And if you look on the organizational chart, you'll see the administrative captain mentioned. That's an addition, and it's an important addition. It balances out the tasks required by our department, and it also allows our field services lieutenant and our detective lieutenant to focus. I want them to focus on their main duties, patrol and detective work. A very important focus, and in the past they were distracted by these many other responsibilities. The addition of the administrative captain allows us to balance the workload and to have somebody responsible for these administrative tasks. Another driver within our budget is a request to add a part-time dispatcher. We're adding a part-time dispatcher at the cost of $21,700 to fill in overtime that is a constant problem within our budget. We haven't had a part-time dispatcher in many years. As a matter of fact, we have one now and she's in training. And we will be so happy to have her fully trained and have our dispatch staff up to full staffing. Very happy to have our dispatch supervisor with us here tonight. Christine Walsh is doing an excellent job for us. I also have my detective lieutenant here tonight, as well as my patrol lieutenant and our community care coordinator. Nevertheless, personnel is a big driver in our budget request this year. As I mentioned, our community care coordinator is here with us tonight. You can see him on our organizational chart. You allowed us to make that hire last year, and boy, did it pay dividends for our community. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the positive results later in the presentation. Just from that one move, we got big positive results. Nevertheless, that's a big part of our budget. In addition, union contractual issues, raises, our officers and union members have a 2.5% increase this year. equating to $166,696. Those contractual issues are a big driver in our budget. The dispatch union also had an increase of 1.75%. Another issue was computer and IT improvements. As you know, we had issues this year with computer and IT related security. And we've had to add almost $12,000 to our budget to compensate for those changes. In addition, I added some important equipment, first aid and medical equipment, for example. I'm asking for an additional $9,700 for medical equipment. And I can give you some examples of the things we're going to buy with that money. We need a new AED. We need batteries for the AEDs we have. Speaking of AEDs, we, the officers, were using adult pads on the AEDs. The AEDs require pads to send the shock to the heart. And it came to mind that we don't have them for children, and we should. And I want to buy these pads. The officers can have these pads in case, God forbid, there's a cardiac problem in a child. So part of that increase is for things such as that. You got it. You're on. All right. Thank you. Very efficient. Anyway, I want to show you our team. Our team has done amazing things this year, and this is our staff. We're 63 strong. Everybody an important part of the team. 48 of those are sworn officers, and they do amazing work. We've built our chain of command to a point where we should be, and I feel very comfortable with. Our detectives do excellent work. Our patrolmen every day go out there and do all they can for our citizens. And as I said, our dispatchers are doing excellent work also. Next slide. And this is the work they're doing. They're doing not only excellent work, but they're handling a heavy workload. You can see on the first line, though, there's a disparity in the case numbers. You can see in 2019, 26,000 plus case numbers. And you can see in 2018, obviously, there were a few thousand more. Now, that was a change based on a decision I made. When I came in, I kind of evaluated what we were handling and what we were taking out case numbers for. And I found that the officers were taking out case numbers for doing routine business checks. For example, they'd pull into the Kohl's Plaza and they'd pull out a case number because they checked Kohl's. But then they might also pull out another case number because they checked Big Lots, and so on. And I thought, while that's important work, I didn't think that we needed to have a case number pulled out for every parking lot they pulled into. It was taking up a lot of their time, it was taking up a lot of the dispatch time, and it was work they should do normally on patrol anyway. So that's the change there. But you'll also see a decrease in arrests. And I'll talk a little bit more about why you see that decrease. This is an amazing number. If you look at motor vehicle stops, look at the number of motor vehicle stops the officers did in 2019 compared to what was done in 2018. More than doubled the number of stops. Amazing work, shows high level of motivation on behalf of the officers. It also shows that they're responsive to the needs of the community. Traffic enforcement is a big concern within our community, and the officers understand that. They're connected with our community. They understand what the community needs are, and that proves it. Now you can also, yes.
On that, it's about 120%. Is that mostly for speed infractions and stuff like that? Is that what you're more enforcing on that?
Yes, a large part of it is speeding. We've also been focusing on red light violations. We're going to be focusing on distracted driving coming up in April. I'm happy to announce we were selected for a $20,000 grant from the DOT to focus on distracted driving. The officers made 147 DUI arrests during the year, which is a sharp increase And no doubt, all of this effort helped to reduce the number of motor vehicle accidents within our community.
Thank you.
If you look at the motor vehicle accidents, for example, you'll see about 150 less this year from last. The hard work the officers put in made a big impact in reducing accidents. Now, to go back to arrests, you can see arrests are on the decline. And if you look at my bottom bullet points, you can see that New Milford is a very safe community. To be a great community, we have to continue to be a safe community. And as you can see, we were recognized as one of the 20 safest towns in Connecticut. We're 19th, and we're very proud of that. And the reason for that is because there's a sharp decrease in crime. We showed a 19% decrease in crime in the third quarter in 2019. In our first quarter in 2019, we showed a 40% decrease in crime. So there was no doubt there's a correlation. The officers' hard work is paying off, thanks to the budget that you provide us. Now, community policing is another part of what we do. Sure, we go out there and we enforce motor vehicle laws and we arrest criminals, but this is a very important part of what we do, an important part of my philosophy, and the officers have bought into this, and I appreciate the hard work they put into connecting with the community. And these are just some examples of the things that we have done throughout the year. You see in the top right, you see an officer who's changing a tire. Amazing feat for an officer to do that, going above and beyond. Walking the beat, holding the hand of a child. Amazing community policing efforts. Our K-9, working with our autistic community. Stopping and visiting children at the Children's Center. Children coming in and seeing us at the PD. It's working. We've connected. And it's an important part of what we do. And last year's budget hearing, I made some promises insofar as community policing. And we, as a department, came through on those. We increased foot patrols and bike patrols. And we started back up on the lake doing community policing in our boat. We are in the process of renovating our police substation. We want to get an officer downtown in the area of the green and businesses. As a matter of fact, Home Depot is committed to donate the supplies needed, and they're going to help volunteer to help us paint the substation and get it up and running. We implemented a Good Citizen program. I appointed a military liaison, our community care coordinators out there in the community. We had coffee with a cop. We're working closely with the Special Olympics. Autism and Alzheimer's become a priority of ours, and we started a program called Take Me Home. It's been very successful and very receptive within the community. We've upgraded our website. We have a new website, and it has a new recruitment video on it. Very proud of our recruitment video. A lot of the officers were involved, and we had WestCon students help us with that. Over 14,000 hits on that video. It's an amazing success. We're doing internships. We've got an internship going now. Of course, we continue our ride-along program, and very, very excited about restarting the DARE program in the upcoming school year, and very excited about starting the Police Explorers program also. Low-cost programs, high impact. So at this point, I'd like to have Justin Comer come up and talk about his position. Again, you funded that last year, and we continue to ask you to fund it this year. A very important position. You know there's a heroin problem, a drug problem across the country, and no community is untouched. We've acknowledged this. Some communities do not acknowledge it. We did. And by using a multifaceted approach, by involving people on a heroin task force, by educating people, by enforcing and getting the drug dealers to stop dealing, but also we want to help people. We don't want to give people a handout, we want to give people a hand up, but we want to help people, and that's an important part of what our community care coordinator does. So I'd like to introduce Justin so he can talk about the successes of his program. Justin.
Appreciate you.
You got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I don't want to take up too much of your time, obviously, but I want to talk a little bit about the program that obviously all of you invested in. And what we're really doing here at the police department is we're piloting a new program. Obviously, it's called a Community Care Coordinator. And like the chief was saying, that there is obviously an opioid problem happening across the country, but there's even more of a problem when it comes to addiction. It's called alcohol. And it's been around for a lot longer, and it's affecting a lot of people. So where our program's a little bit differently is we're focusing on all addiction, mental health, suicide, homelessness, any crisis situations. So really what I do is I respond to crisis situations alongside the police department, and I'm responsible for helping the individuals and the families connect to resources. So in that intervention piece, let's say, for example, we have an overdose. I will respond on scene with the officers. I would make sure they get transported to the hospital. I work with the hospital staff there and make sure we coordinate treatment for that individual. Like most recently, we had an individual who had overdosed, currently completed a 28-day program, and is now in a 6-month aftercare program. He's working on employment to be able to move forward with his life. On top of that, I actually work with the family too that's suffering, their loved ones suffering from addiction, and I get them connected to resources as well. So it's really kind of holistically trying to look at the entire approach here. And as you can see, when I have that individual, based off of the individual need, when I do the assessment, it's more than just connecting them to substance use treatment. It's seeing if there's anything underlying, any mental health treatment that they need. As you can see, sometimes they need medical care. The last time that that got medical care could have been 5-10 years ago. Maybe need assistance with financial resources. I work closely with local social services. I'm actually part of that case review every 2 weeks. We collaborate because we have so many mutual clients. And also, as you can see, referral types, really what I want to try, and we're working alongside the chief, is not only am I responding to calls for service, but community providers can call as well and be like, hey, look, we have a difficult situation. I don't really know what to do. They can sign the appropriate release of information. I sit down with the client, do an assessment, and then connect and refer from there. So, like I said, as you can see, over 50% of the referrals are obviously coming from the police, but about a third of the referrals are actually coming from the community, which are the different providers like social services, the senior center, the shelter, even the town halls made referrals before, soup kitchen, really all the different agencies that I'm working with, because I am regularly collaborating with over 30 agencies. We have a local substance use agency right here in town, several different mental health agencies that I work with, so sometimes they'll call me and ask, hey, look, I have this guy who really needs help. We don't know how to get him into treatment, so I'll sit down, do the assessment, and then I actually will help transport the individual to treatment, because that's been a huge barrier for a lot of our individuals. They'll want to go to detox, and then they'll be told, well, transportation will be here 6 to 8 hours. 6 to 8 hours later, they might not even want to go at that point. So it's really like, how do we get them there now? And that's the service that we're able really to provide. So currently right now I have about, maybe even a little bit higher now, I'm meeting more and more people every day. So roughly around like 27 to 30 people I'm actively working with. I'm consulted all the time by fellow officers as well as anybody from the community as well. Most currently, after talking with the chief too, we're not only just focused on the intervention, but we're working on the prevention at the same time to really spread the awareness. So as you can see here on the slide, it says providing education and resources to 25 healthcare agencies. Due to the opioid epidemic, I thought it'd be necessary to actually educate prescribers of the services that we have in our community. So I've been meeting with all the dentists, primary care offices, even veterinarians to explain when you are prescribing opioids and how dangerous they really are. These are the most common effects, and they obviously can lead to overdose. If you sense that someone may be misusing, here's my card as well as local resources so that they know that they can call. They have an individual that may be struggling. Also with any sort of mental health concerns that they may have if the individual may or may not be feeling depressed. Also, I routinely conduct naloxone trainings, more commonly known as Narcan. We actually started doing one. We did one for town employees a few months ago. I actually have one tomorrow for the Chamber of Commerce in this very room if anybody would like to attend. Lunch is included, and it's completely free. It's really for an opportunity for everyone to really educate themselves on what the opioid epidemic means, how to recognize an overdose, how to administer Narcan, and really where to turn if you need any resources. So really just trying to engage holistically and trying to build a community together, as well as address a lot of people that are suffering from homelessness. I'm in and out of the shelter all the time. I'm very close to that population, so I work with them routinely. And we've been able to house 8 people so far since I've gotten this position in September. And there are several more in the process, but unfortunately what I'd like to try to tell people is you can't house them overnight. If I had a building that had 30 apartments and I could just walk them over to that building and I could house them tomorrow, I would. But we have to work with the resources at the state level as well as the local level, and it can be a challenge. So we are making progress. The most important thing is we're working with agencies that are already doing the work and really just collaborating and facilitating the conversation. So I don't know if anybody has a lot of questions or not. There's a lot of information to throw out. Yes, sir.
I have a couple. What's the age correlation? Like, give me like, let's say under 18, is it more percentage under 18 than over 18 in your view? Is it-
I mean, well, are we talking more about the homeless
Opioids.
population?
Yeah.
No, it's I mean, most of my clients are adults. I mean, we're lucky in New Milford to have a really great youth agency,
Right.
and they're up and coming with the juvenile review board, so I'll work closely if we have a juvenile case like that. I'll make sure we send the right referrals, because the worst thing that can happen in the community is when we duplicate efforts. You know, I'm working on a plan over here, someone else is working on a plan over here, and before you know it, nothing's getting done because we're going in different directions. So I always make sure I follow like youth agency when it comes to
Right. And you talk about depression could be, part of being addicted and that kind of. So there's been some discussion over the last couple of days and weeks about the ESS program. Do you think a correlation of that would help the situation, kind of coincide with some of the younger groups? Is that an important program you think that helps, in your opinion?
I will tell you that I'm not too familiar with the ESS program, and I don't really want to speak to that or
Right.
give any misinformation, but I would say that we really need to start working on emotional and social health within the schools, and I think that's very important for adolescents and even younger populations within the schools. I would recommend that we have those services available. We don't cut it, but like I said, I mean,
No,
specifically.
I'm more asking your opinion on it. And will this help so they won't grow up into adulthood and become addicted if they have a program like that?
Absolutely. I think, if you start earlier on, the better it's going to be for that individual.
And
to be able
Doug,
to
you'll
move
see when the
forward.
youth agency comes to present, that they are actually doing that, the youth agency.
And that's why, usually a lot of times with youth, I'll refer over there. But, it's usually a lot of people that don't have that family support. We're talking older people that are struggling, they're lost family connection, they're alone, they're homeless. What do we do?
Right.
Now we have an opportunity where we can actually work with the resources, provide the transportation, get them housed, get them employed, get them what they need to move forward.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Justin?
I just have one comment. I want to thank you, Justin, and the chief for coming to talk to Rotary last week, and, just from the New Milford Substance Abuse Prevention Council that you used to be our chair. You'd think that everybody is aware of this problem, but when you sit down with 35 reasonably well-connected, intelligent adults, you find out after you were there, that many of them were surprised at some of the statistics, and it was a really valuable thing that you came to talk about what you did, about how it affects everybody in a family and how it's affecting our community. So just from that small group of 35 people, I would say half of them walked out of there they've learned something, and they've taken it to heart, so keep it up.
It even helps when I have providers like primary care doctors being like, I didn't even know there was a service that's free for the community to be able to help these people in need. So, like I said, the police department's doing this, we really are the first.
You're the first high-risk navigator in the state, right?
Yeah, I haven't been able to find a program nationwide that's doing the in-depth work that we are. And I think that, as we continue to be able to show the statistics and be able to collaborate together, that we will be the model for other departments to be able to produce, because we've been collaborating and communicating with other departments as well.
You're a good team.
What's your background for this? I'm just curious.
So before this, I worked for the hospital network in Danbury mostly, and up here in New Milford a little bit. And I was responsible for identifying high utilizers in the emergency department, so people that were frequenting 40, 50, 60, 70 times a year, investigating why are they showing up so much, and then really trying to avert that. Some people would say cost, other people would say visits, because they keep coming in and find more appropriate services for them. So ideally it became, we have this person coming in 80, 90 times a year because they're drunk, they're homeless, we don't know where to send them, someone calls because they're on the side of the road, mandate all the way to the hospital. And then they come in, sleep for the night, and in the morning they wake up, he's sober, couldn't hold them, and they're released back to the community. So that's really how I started up here too, is because I recognized that, there were a lot of people suffering, so working with the shelter and the soup kitchen, identifying for providers in the community, we were able to navigate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Justin. You're a very important part of our efforts. Like I said, it's a team effort. It's our officers, it's our detectives, it's the opioid task force, it's all of you, it's Justin and the providers. And I can say it's making a difference. I don't have long-term trends. Justin's only been here since September with us. But I can tell you that over the last 7 months, we haven't had a heroin overdose death in New Milford. It's amazing, amazing occurrence. And I think we're having an effect. I think we're making a difference and we need to keep that up. I appreciate your time. Be happy to entertain any questions you may have. Yes.
The traffic and parking enforcement officer,
Yes.
she's still doing a good job.
Yes, she does.
Some say yes.
Oh, no, I correspond with them, with my chat.
Did
on a
she
regular
chalk your
basis.
tire also?
I'm happy to support her, really.
She works hard.
She does a great
There's
job.
no doubt about it, very motivated.
Oh, yeah.
She must
Very
wear out a
dedicated.
pair of shoes every other day, every other week.
Yes, and,
She walks so much.
you know, we believe in goal setting and we believe in her continuing to do very, very
She's
well.
very pleasant, always friendly to people. I see her downtown a lot.
Yes, and
Great.
for all the negative she hears, you know, that's good to hear. She does an
Oh,
excellent.
I'm sure she hears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, she does, she's a lovely person, very pleasant, and she's doing her job.
Yep, she's a hard worker.
Does anybody have any questions for the chief on the operations? Chief?
I don't, question, I just want to thank you. Since you've been a part of our community, we've seen so many improvements, and I just thank you. You put your heart into it, and we can tell.
Yes, I do and we do, every day, our responsibility to take it on.
And can we move to the, Steve?
Sorry. I just had a couple questions. There's just so much information, I couldn't keep track of it all. On your salary ticket for across the board, that was mostly all just contractual and then filling the vacancies. I assume there's no vacancies anymore, right?
That's correct.
Perfect, okay. And then I also had, the education stipend, that's just another contractual before, yeah.
Another contractual, and we've had an increase in officers getting their degrees.
Perfect. And then that was the same thing with uniform allowance, I assume too, right?
Yes.
And then the last one that I had was under, is under telephone and computer. There's a whole bunch of new line items. That was all moved over from IT again.
Yes, so that would be the migration that the mayor spoke of earlier.
Perfect. And then the last one, what was that? It was $8,000 increase under the special department supplies. Was that for those? That was for the medical, the pads for the AEDs.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
There are other additions in AED, AED batteries. We are actually doing more training with medical, and we need a training dummy. So it's all medical related.
Perfect. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Quick question, how many how many dogs do you have?
We have 3, 2 German Shepherds and a lab.
So they're making quite a bit of money, those dogs here. I noticed there's $31,000 in that breed.
So that is the stipend
That's
for
for
the
their
kids,
kids.
it's not for the
Yeah,
dogs.
yeah.
And another
I'm
one,
trying to trick
we have 2 motorcycles, recommend a motorcycle
Yes,
patrol
so,
now, right?
yes, so we have a lot of exciting things going on at the New Milford PD. Part of it is we're focusing on traffic enforcement in the next year. It's gonna be a big focus of ours, and we added 2 police motorcycles recently using some capital carryover money that we had from last year. And I thought it was a very good use. And the motorcycles are gonna be out there enforcing traffic. You're gonna see them on 202 Route 7 specifically.
Good.
Next, we're going to move on to the capital. That'd
I was gonna
be
say,
AED.
great idea for the pediatric paddles for the APD.
Something so simple, something so important.
It's essential.
Yes.
Absolutely essential.
Yes, thank you.
So page 237. And then it's broken out on page 238. Does anybody have any questions?
The scuba, the $12,430. replacing units, or?
Yes, we're replacing scuba gear. So their scuba suits are old.
All of them, or did they? or
We did half of them last year, and we're gonna do the other half this
Okay.
year.
Because I know it's the same amount, so I figured it was probably
Yes.
material. Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions concerning the police cap? Steve?
I saw there was a big increase on the automobiles
Yes.
versus the prior year.
Yes. I looked at the automobiles, and the way it was always done is that we leased them, or at least in the recent past, it was a lease. And I looked at that this year, and I saw that the interest rate on the lease was 6.9%. And I'm thinking to myself, if I went into a dealership and someone offered me a bargain 6.9% interest rate, I'd turn around and walk out the door. So I pretty much refused to want to pay that. Not only that, but there's lease initiation fees. And the only benefit with that type of lease is you get to pay it over time. There's no other real benefits. So I decided we should buy the cars outright. And by doing that, we save that interest, we save that lease initiation fee, and we own the vehicles. The large sum is 3 vehicles. Last year it was 2. And it also includes the last lease payment. So we still owe $25,000 on a 3rd-year lease payment. So it includes the 3 vehicles and 1 more lease payment.
So
That would
that,
make sense, instead of kicking the can per se with the lease payments. Yeah, I
Yes,
agree.
and 6.9% is just.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yes.
That's brutal, yeah. Good catch.
And you'll notice, when we go to DPW, it's the same thing, we're buying rather than leasing, just for that same reason.
Yeah.
And I just have one more ad in our capital. One thing I noticed is we didn't have a holding cell in our facility, so I asked for $4,800 to have a holding cell installed. It's an officer safety issue. It's something we should do. The way we handle it now, if we have an arrest and the officer's processing that arrest, we have a second officer come in and just watch the prisoner while the officer's. It's not efficient.
Not safe.
So that $4,800 is also a need, not a want.
Any other questions for Chief Steve?
Because they'd be in the same room, the officers sitting on the computer and the,
Yes,
Yeah.
very close to each other.
I remember when I got fingerprinted from pistol permit,
yeah.
I was in there, yeah.
That's-
And I remember looking at it, that's why.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you
Any
all
other
very
questions
much.
for the chief? Very much. For capital? Okay.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you,
Good night.
and thank the men and the women police
I will.
for all their hard work.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is, Walter, would you start with the Board of Finance to recess?
Yes.
Motion for recess? Board of Finance? All in favor?
All right.
And for the town council, I entertain a motion to recess till tomorrow.
So moved.
Any discussion? Council members, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Katie. And then tomorrow night, we have the fire departments and the board of ed.
Tomorrow night, you're-